Well, okay, so we were talking about Connie and Rose of Sharon. Remember that they are together, they are, they are very much in love. And we read last week that Connie, the husband, was like in awe at Rose, no? He admired her and her pregnancy, no? So she looked at him and smiled secretly. She was all secrets now she was pregnant. Secrets and little silences that seemed to have meanings. She was pleased with herself and she complained about things that didn't really matter. As she demanded services of Connie that were silly, and both of them knew they were silly. Connie was pleased with her too and filled with wonder that she was pregnant. He liked to think he was in on the secrets she had. When she smiled slyly, he smiled slyly too, and they exchanged confidences in whispers. The world had drawn close around them, and they were in the center of it. So you see the young couple, yes, completely in love, isolated from the rest. And then, well, he gives her some water, and he says, how do you like to be going along in that? Because a real nice car, a Lincoln Zephyr, passes by. Yes, as we said before, there were some good cars, yes. A Lincoln Zephyr, silvery and low. I sent you the picture of a Lincoln Zephyr, I think. She turned to see where the others were and saw them clustered about the track. Reassured, she said, how do you like to be going along in that? Connie sighed, maybe after. They both knew what he meant. And if there's plenty work in California, we'll get our own car. But them, he indicated the disappearing Zephyr, them kind costs as much as a good-sized house. I'd rather have the house. I like to have the house and one of them, she said. No, so they are making plans for the future, no? But of course, the house would be first. Well, they were terribly excited about the pregnancy. You feel all right, he asked. Just start riding in the sun. We got to do that or we won't never get to California, I know. The dog wandered, sniffing, past the track, trotted to the puddle under the hose again and lapped at the muddy water. And then he moved away, nose down and ears hanging. He sniffed his way among the dusty weeds beside the road to the edge of the pavement. He raised his head and looked across, and then started over. Rose of Sharon screamed shrilly. A big, swift car whisked near, tires squealed. The dog dodged helplessly and with a shriek cut off in the middle, went under the wheels. So we have the first death, the dog. The big car slowed for a moment and faces looked back, and then it gathered greater speed and disappeared. So they ran over the dog and then they left. So Rose of Sharon's eyes were wide. Do you think it'll hurt? She begged. Think it'll hurt? Connie put his arm around her. Come, sit down. It wasn't nothing. But I felt it hurt. I felt it kind of jar when I yelled. Come, sit down. It wasn't nothing. It won't hurt. So the dog is killed, has been killed. Tom and Uncle John walked to the mess. The last quiver was going out of the crushed body. Tom took it by the legs and dragged it to the side of the road. Uncle John looked embarrassed, as though it were his fault. I ought to have tied him up, he said. Pa looked down at the dog for a moment, and then he turned away. Let's get out here. I don't know how we was go and feed him anyways. Just as well, maybe. The fat man came from behind the truck. I'm sorry, folks. A dog just don't last no time near a highway. I had 3 dogs run over in a year. Don't keep none, no more. And he said, don't you folks worry none about it. I'll take care of him, bury him out in the cornfield. So they have already lost the dog. And of course, Rose is very worried. You suppose it might have hurt? No, said Man. Where is Grandma? I don't know. She's around here somewhere, maybe in the outhouse. The girl went toward the toilet, and in a moment she came out helping Grandma alone. She went to sleep in there. So Grandma had been to the toilet, yes, to sleep. Grandma grinned. It's nice in there. They got a patent toilet in there and the water comes down. I like it in there. Would have took a good nap if I wasn't woke up. So she liked the toilet, you see. It ain't a nice place to sleep, said Rose of Sharon, and she helped Grandma into the car. Grandma settled herself happily. Maybe it ain't nice for Bertie, but it's nice for nice, she said. Tom said, let's go. We got to make miles. Where the kids go? And in a moment, they broke from the cornfield. So the girl and the boy came back. They brought eggs. I got soft eggs. She rushed close with Winfield close behind. Look, a dozen soft grayish white eggs were in her grubby hand. And as she held up her hand, her eyes fell upon the dead dog beside the road. Oh, she said. Rudy and Winfield walked slowly toward the dog. They inspected him. Pa called to them, come on, lest you want to get left. They turned solemnly and walked to the truck. Rudy looked once more at the gray reptile eggs in her hand, and then she threw them away. They climbed up the side of the truck. His eyes were still open, said Rudy in a hushed tone. But Winfield gloried in the scene. He said boldly, his guts was just strewed all over. Well, so something negative that happens. Al had the hood of the Hudson up, and he checked the oil level. He brought a gallon can from the floor of the front seat and poured a quantity of cheap black oil into the pipe and checked the level again. Tom came beside him. What I should take her a piece, he asked. I ain't tired, said Al. Well, you didn't get no sleep last night. I took a snooze this morning. Get up there on top. I'll take her. All right. But watch the oil gauge pretty close. Take her slow. And I've been watching for a short. Take a look at the needle now and then. For he jumps to discharge, it's a short. And take her slow, Tom. She's overloaded. Tom laughed. I'll watch her. You can rest easy. The family piled on top of the truck again. Ma settled herself beside Grandma in the seat, and Tom took his place and started the motor. Sure is loose, he said, and he put it in gear and pulled away down the highway. Well, now they go from Paden to Meeker, yes, Meeker to Harrah, then Oklahoma City, the big city. Tom drove straight on. For you to have an idea, I also sent you the map, yes?
Yes.
Rudy and Winfield saw it all, and it embarrassed them with its bigness and its strangeness, and it frightened them with the fine-clothed people they saw. They did not speak of it to each other. Later they would, but not now. They saw the oil derricks in the town on the edge of the town. Oil derricks black and the smell of oil and gas in the air. But they didn't exclaim. It was so big and so strange, it frightened them. In the street, Rose of Sharon saw a man in a light suit. He wore white shoes and a flat straw hat. She touched Connie and indicated the man with her eyes. And then Connie and Rose of Sharon giggled softly to themselves. And the giggles got the best of them. They covered their mouths. So you see the different members of the family looking at different things on the road, yes? The outskirts were widespread. Tom drove slowly and carefully in the traffic, and then they were on 66. So they left Oklahoma City. Ma had been silent for a long time. Maybe we better find a place to stop before sunset, she said. I got to get some pork a-boiling and some bread made. That takes time. Sure, Tom agreed. We ain't gonna make this trip in one jump. Might well stretch ourselves. Oklahoma City to Bethany is 14 miles. Tom said, I think we better stop before the sun goes down. I'll go to build that thing on the top. Sun'll kill the folks up there. Ma had been dozing again. Her head jerked upright. Got to get some supper at cooking, she said. And she said, Tom, your pa told me about your crossing the state line. He was a long time answering. Yeah, what about it, Ma? Well, I'm scared about it. It'll make you kind running away. Maybe they'll catch you. Because remember that he's on parole, so he shouldn't leave the state. Tom held his hand over his eyes to protect himself from the lowering sun. Don't you worry. I figured her out. There's lots of fellows out on parole, and there's more going in all the time. If I get caught for anything else out west, well, then they got my picture and my prints in Washington. They'll send me back. But if I don't do no crimes, they won't give a damn. Yes, so he figures that there are many people, so they are not going to bother him unless he does something wrong. Well, I'm scared about it. Sometimes you do a crime and you don't even know it's bad. Maybe they got crimes in California we don't even know about. Maybe you're gonna do something and it's all right, and in California it ain't all right. Be just the same if I wasn't on parole. Only if I get caught, I get a bigger jolt than other folks. Now, you quit worrying. We got plenty to worry about. You thought you figuring out things to worry about. I can't help it, she said. Minute you cross the line, you done a crime. Well, that's better sticking around Saliso and starving to death. Claro, if he stays in Saliso, he's going to starve because there is nothing to do. They went through Bethany and out on the other side in a ditch where a culvert went under the road. An old touring car was pulled off the highway and a little tent was pitched beside it. And smoke came out of a stovepipe through the tent. Tom pointed ahead. There are some folks camping. Looks like as good a place as we've seen. He slowed his motor and pulled to a stop beside the road. The hood of the old touring car was up, and a middle-aged man stood looking down at the motor. Well, they meet, another family. Tom leaned out of the window. Any law against folks stopping here for the night? The man had seen only the truck. His eyes focused down on Tom. I don't know, he said. We'd only stopped here because we couldn't get no further. Any water here? The man pointed to a service station shack about a quarter of a mile ahead. There's water there, they let you take a bucket off. Tom hesitated. Well, you suppose we could camp down alongside? The lean man looked puzzled. We don't own it. We only stopped here because this goddamn old trap wouldn't go no further. Tom insisted. Anyways, you're here and we ain't. You got a right to say if you want neighbors or not. The appeal to hospitality had an instant effect. The lean face broke into a smile. Why, sure, come on off the road. Proud to have you. So you see, Tom asks for permission to stay there because there is this man and with his car. And the man says, of course, yes, you are welcome. And he called, Siri, there are some folks going to stay with us. Come on out and say how do you do. Siri ain't well, he added. The tent flaps opened and a wizened woman came out. A face wrinkled as a dried leaf and eyes that seemed to flame in her face. Black eyes that seemed to look out of a well of horror. She was small and shuddering. She held herself upright by a tent flap, and the hand holding onto the canvas was a skeleton covered with wrinkled skin. When she spoke, her voice had a beautiful low timbre, soft and modulated, and yet with ringing overtones. Tell them welcome, she said. Tell them good and welcome. Tom drove off the road and brought his truck into the field and lined it up with the touring car. And people boiled down from the truck. Rudy and Winfield too quickly. Ma went quickly to work. So By the tent, a little embarrassment had set in and social intercourse had paused before it started. Pa said, "You ain't Oklahoma folks." And Al, who stood near the car, looked at the license plates. "Kansas," he said. The lean man said, "Galena, or right about there, Wilson, Ivy Wilson." "We are Jodes," said Pa. "We come from right near Saliso." "Well, we are proud to meet you folks," said Ivy Wilson. "Sari, this is Jodes. I knowed you wasn't Oklahoma folks. You talk queer, kinda. There ain't no blame, you understand." They recognized that the others were from Kansas because of the way they spoke. "Everybody says words different," said Ivy. "Arkansas folks says them different, and Oklahoma folks says them different. And we seen a lady from Massachusetts, and she said them different of all." Couldn't hardly make out what she was saying. Noah and Uncle John and the preacher began to unload the truck. They helped Grandpa down and sat him on the ground, and he sat limply, staring ahead of him. "You sick, Grandpa?" Noah asked. "You goddamn right," said Grandpa weakly, "sicker than hell." Sari Wilson walked slowly and carefully toward him. "How do you like to come in our tent?" she asked. "You can lay down on our mattress and rest." He looked up at her, drawn by her soft voice. "Come on now," she said. "You'll get some rest. We'll help you over." Without warning, Grandpa began to cry. His chin wavered and
Poor Grandpa.
No, Grandpa, yes. His chin wavered and his old lips tightened over his mouth and he sobbed hoarsely. Ma rushed over to him and put her arms around him. She lifted him to his feet, her broad back straining, and she half lifted, half helped him into the tent. Uncle John said, "He must be good and sick. He ain't never done that before. Never seen him blubbering in my life." He jumped up on the truck and tossed a mattress down. Ma came out of the tent and went to Casey. "You've been around sick people," she said. "Grandpa's sick. Won't you go take a look at him?" Casey walked quickly to the tent and went inside. A double mattress was on the ground, the blanket spread neatly, and a little tin stove stood on iron legs, and the fire in it burned unevenly. A bucket of water, a wooden box of supplies, and a box for a table, that was all. The light of the setting sun came pinkly through the tent walls. Sari Wilson knelt on the ground beside the mattress, and Grandpa lay on his back. His eyes were open, staring upward, and his cheeks were flushed. He breathed heavily. Casey took the skinny old wrist in his fingers. "Feeling kind tired, Grandpa?" he asked. The staring eyes moved towards his voice, but did not find him. The lips practiced a speech, but did not speak it. Casey felt the pulse, and he dropped the wrist and put his hand on Grandpa's forehead. A struggle began in the old man's body. His legs moved restlessly, and his hands stirred. He said a whole string of blurred sounds that were not words, and his face was red under the spiky white whiskers. Sari Wilson spoke softly to Casey. "Know what's wrong?" He looked up at the wrinkled face and the burning eyes. "Do you?" "I think so." "What?" asked Casey. "Might be wrong. I wouldn't like to say." Casey looked back at the twitching red face. "Would you say maybe he's working up a stroke?" You understand? So the grandpa is having a stroke. Yes. "I'd say that. I've seen it 3 times before." From outside came the
A
sound
heart
of...
attack.
Sorry?
A heart attack.
Yes. Yes. From outside came the sounds of a camp making, wood chopping, and the rattle of pans. Ma looked up through the flaps. "Grandma wants to come in. Would she better?" The preacher said, "She'll just fret it if she don't." "Think he's all right?" Ma asked. Casey shook his head slowly. Ma looked quickly down at the struggling old face with blood pounding through it. She drew outside and her voice came through. "He's all right, Grandma. He's just taking a little rest." And Grandma answered sulkily, well, I want to see him. He's a tricky devil. He wouldn't never let you know. And she came scurrying through the flaps. She stood over the mattresses and looked down. What's the matter with you? She demanded of Grandpa. And again his eyes reached toward her voice and his lips writhed. He's sulking, said Grandma. I told you he was tricky. He was gonna sneak away this morning so he wouldn't have to come. And then his hip got a hurting, she said disgustedly. He's just sulking. I seen him when he wouldn't talk to nobody before. Casey said gently, he ain't sulking, Grandma. He's sick. Oh, she looked down at the old man again. Sick bad, you think? Pretty bad, Grandma. For a moment, she hesitated uncertainly. Well, she said quickly, why ain't you praying? You're a preacher, ain't you? Casey's strong fingers blundered over to Grandpa's wrist and clasped it around it. I told you, Grandma, I ain't a preacher no more. Pray anyway, she ordered. You know all the stuff by heart. I can't, said Casey. I don't know what to pray for or who to pray to. Grandma's eyes wandered away and came to rest on Sari. He won't pray, she said. Do you ever tell you how Ruthie prayed when she was a little skinner? Says, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog got none. Amen. That's just what she done. The shadow of someone walking between the tent and the sun crossed the canvas. Grandpa seemed to be struggling, all his muscles twitched, and suddenly he jarred as though under a heavy blow. He lay still and his breath was stopped. Casey looked down at the old man's face and saw that it was turning a blackish purple. Sari touched Casey's shoulder. She whispered, his tongue, his tongue, his tongue. Casey nodded. Get in front, Grandma. He pried the tight shawls apart and reached into the old man's throat for the tongue. And as he lifted it clear, a rattling breath came out, and a sobbing breath was indrawn. Casey found a stick on the ground and held down the tongue with it, and the uneven breath rattled in and out. Grandma hopped about like a chicken. Pray, she said, pray, you pray, I tell you. Sari tried to hold her back. Pray, God, you, Grandma cried. Casey looked up at her for a moment. The rasping breath came louder and more unevenly. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Glory, shouted Grandma. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. A long gasping sigh came from the open mouth, and then a crying release of air. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us. The breathing had stopped. Casey looked down into Grandpa's eyes, and they were clear and deep and penetrating, and there was a knowing, serene look in them. Hallelujah, said Grandma. Go on. Amen, said Casey. Grandma was still then, and outside the tent all the noise had stopped. A car whisked by on the highway. Casey still knelt on the floor beside the mattress. The people outside were listening, standing quietly intent on the sounds of dying. Sari took Grandma by the arm and led her outside, and Grandma moved with dignity and held her head high. She walked for the family and held her head straight for the family. Sari took her to a mattress lying on the ground and sat her down on it. And Grandma looked straight ahead, proudly, for she was on show now. The tent was still, and at last Casey spread the tent flaps with his hands and stepped out. Pa asked softly, what was it? Stroke, said Casey. A good, quick stroke. Life began to move again. So you see, finally, Grandpa died. He never made it. Yes, so... and then after this, life began to move again because they had to continue.
They had to go on to California.
Yes.
Whatever happens.
So you see, they have already lost the dog, and now Grandpa died. So imagine this trip is already rather full of hardships.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
And it just began.
It just began. They have just crossed Oklahoma City. Wow. The family became.
And what were they going to do with Grandpa?
Well, now
Take
you
him,
see.
leave him there. Yes.
Now you see.
Mhm.
The family became a unit. Pa squatted down on the ground and Uncle John beside him. Pa was the head of the family now. Ma stood behind him. Noah and Tom and Al squatted, and the preacher sat down and then reclined on his elbow. Connie and Rose of Sharon walked at a distance. Now Ruthie and Winfield, clattering up with a bucket of water held between them, felt the change, and then slowed up and set down the bucket and moved quietly to stand with Ma. Grandma sat proudly, coldly, until the group was formed, until no one looked at her, and then she lay down and covered her face with her arm. Pa said, "It was in Mr. Wilson's tent." Uncle John nodded. "He loaned his tent. Fine, friendly folks," Pa said softly. Wilson stood by his broken car, and Sari had gone to the mattress to sit beside Grandma. But Sari was careful not to touch her. Pa called, "Mr. Wilson, we are thankful to you folks. We are proud to help," said Wilson. "We are beholden to you," said Pa. "There's no beholden in a time of dying," said Wilson. And Sari echoed him, "Never no beholden." Or Al said, "I'll fix your car. Me and Tom will." So you see the feeling of communication between the two families, no? How they...
Solidarity, no?
Exactly, yes. This is very strong here, no? Very strong. When they say, "We are thankful to you," and they say, "We are proud to help," we are beholden to you. Estamos obligados. No, no hay obligación en el momento de la muerte, no. Es hermoso. So, Pa said, "We got to figure out what to do. There's laws."
It's completely different from the situation they lived before, where there was no solidarity at all. Like
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
People
So
who have nothing and
these people have nothing, and the Wilsons, the ones who are there, cannot go on because their car doesn't work, and so
Right.
Tom and Al, the two young men, said, "Well, we are going to fix your car. We are going to help you."
Mhm.
Pa said, "We got to figure what to do. There's laws." Clara, this is what Vanessa said. What can you do with a man who dies in the middle of the road? You got to report the death. And when you do that, they either take $40 for the undertaker or they take him for a pauper. Yes, you understand pauper, no?
Yes.
Un pobre,
El mendigo, sí,
un
el-
mendigo. Uncle John broke in. "We never did have no paupers." Tom said, "Maybe we got to learn. We never got booted off no land before neither." "We done it clean," said Pa. "There can't no blame be laid on us. We never took nothing we couldn't pay. We never suffered no man's charity. When Tom here got in trouble, we could hold up our heads. He only done what any man would have done." "Then what will we do?" Uncle John asked. "We go in like the law says and they'll come out for him. We only got $150. They take 40 to bury Grandpa and we won't get to California, or else they'll bury him a pauper." Pa said softly, "Grandpa buried his pa with his own hand, done it in dignity, and shaped the grave nice with his own shovel. That was a time when a man had the right to be buried by his own son, and the son had the right to bury his own father. The law says different now," said Uncle John. "Sometimes the law can't be followed no way." So you see, they have decided to bury Papa there, no, Grandpa. Not indecent.